do every day, and ask a question. We're going to take audience questions. We're going to take telephone questions, and of course our panel of Congress people. Let me say, this is one of maybe 3 times in the 18 years I've done the radio show, and I've turned the radio show over, but this issue is important enough. So we are not doing Exhale Fridays. We are doing mental health. And a lot of you around the country should have a concern about this, because it is a national problem. And this is black men and boys, the U.S. Commission on Black Men and Boys. Let me say that we have announcements that don't forget Saturday and Sunday, watch Politics Nation with Al Sharpton. I'll be live both nights, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Among my guests tomorrow will be Congressman Jim Clyburn. And Congressman Clyburn is going to tell us what he has decided after today in terms of the calls by some in Congress to ask the president to step aside. And just watch tomorrow. It's going to be very important. He'll be among my guests on Sunday. We also have the mayor of Milwaukee, who the Republican convention is coming to his city. I was in Milwaukee yesterday. I want to thank Dominique Sharpton for standing in for me yesterday. I was in Milwaukee doing the eulogy for the funeral of Devontae Mitchell, a man killed at a Hyatt hotel last week. Got into an argument, they pinned him down, put the knee in his neck, and killed him. And we flew in, because of the family, Ben Crump and I on the case. National Action Network paid for the funeral. And it really touched me. He had 2 little kids, neither one of them over 5. We started a scholarship program, but the National Action Network started with $10,000. Those kids should not grow up without a daddy, without knowing that his life was important. You're going to be hearing a lot about the case. Mayor of Milwaukee will be on the television show with us. And among others, on Sunday, other members of Congress and the Senate. So make sure you watch Politics Nation with Al Sharpton live 5 p.m. Eastern Time on MSNBC. And one of the things I'm going to talk about, and some of you saw, I was on Morning Joe this morning, I do not understand how you have an hour press conference in the NATO and not one black reporter could ask a question. I know it's supposed to be NATO, but they act like we're not in the world. And as soon as I said it and got off the show, they called from the White House, but I told them they called a day late and a reporter short. I support the president. I support the vice president. She and I were in essence together last week. But I do, I'm honest with my friends. You cannot have those kind of press conferences. There's press here. And I don't play that game. What I say, I say. That's why I don't ask nobody for federal, state, or city money. I say what needs to be said. That's why I do what I do, say what I say, wear the hair the way I want them, just like you. Stand up. You wear your hair the way you want. I like the way you got your hair. You like my hair? Okay, you do it. If you don't like my hair, I got some security escorts you. I have the privilege, also tomorrow morning we'll have our regular Saturday rally. I will be here. I want to thank Reverend Johnny Green, who spoke in my behalf last week. I only missed it this Saturday. And some of our regular members are in the house. Johnny Green did a great job last week, and Reverend Boise Kemp and others. Many years ago, I met a fiery woman in the state of Florida who I automatically bonded with and really fell in love with in a non-personal way. I'll be careful how I say that. And these days and times, get her and me in trouble. But she had me come down to Florida to deal with gun violence, to deal with other issues. And then there was a bar in Perry, Florida, that made blacks go to the back door to get their liquor about 20 years ago. And ever since then, she became a state rep, then a member of Congress, and now she, at the 24th Congressional District, in fact, when she was elected, she had me come and do the prayer at her dedication. Now she chairs the U.S. Commission on Social Status in Black Men and Boys. And she has everyone on there from me to Larry Elder. That's about as far polar opposites as you can get. And but that's the kind of leadership she is, that's the kind of person she is. And she's the one that said she wanted to have this hearing in Harlem and live on our show. So I said, why don't we do it uptown at the House of Justice? She said, Harlem is where we can do it, and I said I would do it nationwide. And we've had everybody on this stage for our rallies on Saturday, from Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton. I never let anybody tell me they can do my radio show live. But this is the kind of respect I have. Give a big hand to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. And with the Congresswoman, we have a true brother, a brother beloved that has been in the fight a long time. Congressman from Georgia, and he and I go back, and he is here with her and going to be part of our congressional panel. Give a hand, Congressman Hank Johnson. And last but not least, and there are going to be others to join us, but all of us know Congresswoman Lucy McBath from Georgia. I remember I was on an airplane, Congresswoman Wilson, and the flight attendant came over to me and said, why ain't you fighting for my son? I said, what are you talking about? I heard about the case, but I hadn't got involved. And many of you were involved in that, where the guy said that they was playing their music too loud. And she fought for her son by herself at first. And then all of us got involved, and she was able to turn her pain into power. And then they put in addition, they redrew the lines, they drew them back, but no matter how they drew the lines, they couldn't draw Lucy McBath back. So all of you down in Atlanta that listening to me now, WAOK 3 hours a day, she's not missing in action, she's acting national action. That will give her hand. So I am going to take a commercial break, and I'm going to turn it over to Frederica Wilson. We're going to get started. And again, we do not want to not lose our focus. Black men, mental health is a real problem. There's nothing disgraceful or shameful that we must respond to men and boys in our community with mental health issues. The shame is when we don't deal with it. The shame is when we don't recognize it and try to deal with it. In other communities, they deal with it as something of a health condition that needs to be dealt with. In our community, we act like something just wrong with us. And that's why I was so happy when Congresswoman Wilson said, let's do it on the ground and let's do it on the air. Many of you listening around the country have people in your family that have mental health problems. You need to stop in many ways. You need to stop trying to stigmatize them and let us find out ways from these experts and from our congressional representatives on how we can help them, how we can deal with ways that would be some way that can be beneficial toward bringing them toward fullness. And I think the only people that to me should be shamed are people that don't deal with this. So let's take a break, and after the break, we're going right into it with Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. People in here. Sharpton. We'll be right back.
In November, President Biden has doubled down on his commitment to stay in the race and serve another term. Meanwhile, the chorus of Democrats calling for President Biden to exit the 2024 campaign. The New York Times op-ed, longtime president to withdraw. He said he recently hoped to Joe before the hurricane is moving in parts of Pennsylvania, New York, and New England. Meanwhile, over 1.5 million customers are still dealing with power outages in Texas days after it made landfall. Many are without air conditioning as the region deals with a dangerous heat wave. The heat index reaching 106 on Wednesday. Kawhi Leonard is no longer on the U.S. men's Olympic basketball roster. The statement the team said Leonard will be granted to get ready for Olympics and not ready to compete. However, it said that Leonard respects the U.S. basketball and his team will determine its winning record to sign the NBA for the NBA season. To subscribe to my free daily newsletter, please visit civilworks.com. For all your news 24/7, go to newsletter.com. Stay informed,
because penalties and interest on unpaid taxes compound back, making it impossible to ever get out of this. Don't let taxes destroy your life. You need to call Optima Tax Relief, the #1 tax resolution firm. They are experts in the Fresh Start Initiative, one of the biggest breaks that the IRS has ever offered. If you qualify, you can save thousands. Optima's resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. They have an A+ rating for the veterans and will fight to give you the best deal possible. Call Optima now for a free consultation. Call 800-481-8144. 800-481-8144. 800-481-8144.
To announce that the show podcast is now available on the Urban One Podcast Network. This show, hosted by Mr. Whitfield, is part of the journey of discovering and rediscovering love and relationships. With over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, Dear Future Wifey has become a prototype for discussions about love and relationships. Learn how to rediscover love, heal, and have faith in relationships. Go to urbanonepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Imagine a world where animals and humans coexist in harmony, where wild animals thrive, habitats are protected, and marginalized communities are empowered. At International Animal Rescue, this is our mission. Our holistic community-led projects not only rescue animals, but also protect and replenish precious habitats, creating a better future for us all. We cannot do this without you. Show your support now and help keep the wild wild. Visit internationalanimalrescue.org.
Keeping it real, keeping it real. I'm your host, Reverend Al Sharpton, and we're live today at the U.S. Commission on Black Men and Boys field hearing on suicide and mental health, chaired by Congresswoman Frederica Wilson of Florida, and we have various members of Congress with her, as well as some experts, and we're going to get right to that. Let me first, though, say before we start, two housekeeping things. I want to thank our Senior Vice President of Policy, Ebony Riley, for the work she's done. And he's really helped put this together. Our Health Director of National Action Network, Alicia Butler. Alicia Taylor, who works out of DC. And the Executive Director of the Caucus of Black Men and Boys, Dr. Malcolm Woodland. Dr. Malcolm. All right. We are honored, and let me say that we have said to all of the panelists, we had them in the back. Congresswoman offered them some sandwiches and fruit, and so there's nothing left for y'all. These folks came up there hungry. I just want you to know. One other thing, my daughter Dominique, who she guest hosted yesterday, so she thinks she's in charge. She told me everybody does not know Congresswoman Macbeth's son's name, Jordan Davis. Y'all remember Jordan Davis? She's got a fact check and all of that. That's why I don't let her down to MSNBC, embarrassing me in front of the other folks. My privilege to introduce to you the chairperson, founder, who conceived the U.S. Commission on Social Status of Black Men and Boys, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. Give her a hand.
Reverend Sharpton, thank you. What Reverend Sharpton didn't tell you was how far we go back, even before going to Paris, Florida. Right. When the Haitians started migrating to Miami-Dade County, Reverend Sharpton and I would take every Saturday to go to Crone Detention Center to advocate for their release. And we got thousands of them released in Miami-Dade County. And then when Reverend Wilson went missing out of foster care, I called him back. And we fought and changed the whole foster care system in the state of Florida. And then we had a boy beaten to death in a boot camp called Martin Lee Anderson.
right.
And we advocated for him. And then we
That's
had
where I met Ben
Trayvon.
Crump. That's where I met Ben
That's
Crump.
why we
Martin
met
Anderson.
Ben Crump. That's how Ben Crump got famous.
That's right.
Martin Lee Anderson. And then when I was sworn in as a member of Congress, he came to Miami and all of the pastors in my community did a convocation for me and a blessing, and the keynote speaker was Reverend Sharpton. So they blessed me, and I've been here for 14 years. It's amazing for me to be seated on this podium today with two stalwarts. I mean, these are wonderful members of Congress. And I want you to know that Reverend Hank Johnson is working on a bill to expand the Supreme Court and put in term limits. This is the gentleman who started that movement, and he's not gonna stop until he does it. And Representative Lucy Macbeth, will you remember the loud music case in the car? Well, that was Jordan Davis. And Lucy did that on her own because no one was listening. And she started calling everybody and saying, someone will help me with my children. And it was in Florida. It was in Jacksonville. I'll never forget it. And I remember after Jordan was murdered, and I brought up the 5,000 role models for the ALC, they came with his diploma and presented it to Lucy because he missed graduation. So these are two special members. And you must know that seated here today, who will be witnesses, some of the finest in the field. And they're going to be sharing with us. We heard them in Washington, D.C. Everybody was smitten. Reverend Sharpton was smitten. And so we're here today to listen to them again today. So let me tell you, the commission is the only independent body in the United States that was established for black people. And since the Freedmen's Bureau, remember the Freedmen's Bureau was supposed to give everybody 40 acres and a mule. Yeah. It lasted 2 years and the Ku Klux Klan shut it down.
Right.
So the only thing we have is the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, and we're pushing through to make it a powerful think tank where we can sit back and work on the issues that are related to education, health care, criminal justice, gun violence, homelessness, health care, and mental illness and suicide, which we're doing today. And now, I'm gonna ask the witnesses to please stand. I'm gonna swear you in, just like you in court. Raise your right hand, please, and you may respond by saying, I will. I now want to ask each of you to raise your right hand. Do you swear and confirm that the information that you are about to provide today is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief? Thank you. You are now officially sworn in, and you may be seated. And I'm going to turn it back over to Reverend Sharpton.
All right. Let me thank again, give a big hand. And certainly support her and support our other two Congress people. And I want you that have come in the back from NAM, both of these congressmen and women that joined Chairman got some real fighting, because when she's being nice when she said that Lucy Medbad went out there by herself, she stayed on everybody's case. I told y'all, she outright punked me on an airplane. But she got the job done. And Hank Johnson, I was down there for some congressional hearing, and one of the right wingers got smart with me, and he started going to the other side of Atlanta, taking his jacket off. We had a crew hang out. He'll remember that later. All right, let us start by, we have our experts. I want to ask the question, and that each of you can take a minute to just start the answer, and then the Congresswoman will guide us how we're going to go. But give us the data, as you know it, and the core reasons that we're dealing with a serious problem of mental health with black boys and black men. And on our panel, and you can elaborate more, but we have with us a former NFL linebacker, Marcus Smith. Give Marcus a hand. He's not going to tell you all that I tackled him once or twice. But anyway, give a hand from Move Your Water, from the National Alliance of Mental Illness, Daniel H. Gillison. American Psychological Association, Arthur Evans is in the house. National Association of Social Workers, Anthony Estreet is in the house. And a former NFL player and therapist, Dr. Jay Barnett is in the house. Dr. Barnett, let's start with you. What is the crisis, how serious is the crisis of black men and boys in mental health?
First, I want to say thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for this opportunity, Congresswoman Wilson, Congressman Johnson, and Congressman Beth. I would say the current crisis is the suicide rate. The past 10 years has steadily increased, ages 16 to 24, at one time or another.
Go ahead.
Okay. So it has become the third leading cause of death, ages 16 through 24, and that percentage has also increased over the past few years, almost now up to 80%, with black boys taking their lives at an increasing rate. A lot of that due to depression, a lot of that is racial trauma, but I would go on to say that a lot of this is unprocessed pain. When we're looking at the crime rate that is increasing all over, there's something that I love to associate. And when you look at crime, you're looking at unprocessed pain, which is also associated when a man cannot process properly. He either becomes one or two things, suicidal or homicidal. And so we have a huge issue that no one is listening to the cries of black boys and black men. The school systems are not only expelling them at a higher rate, but when the issue is not criminal, I would go on to say that issue is clinical. So when you're looking at black boys that are not being able to comprehend, not being able to give attention, we have not considered their emotional well-being, and that's one of the issues that we have right now.
Dr. Street.
Thank you for that, Reverend Sharpton. Good afternoon, and thank you, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, Congressman Hank Johnson, Congresswoman Lucy McFadden for being here and highlighting this issue. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Social Workers, which is a large professional social work organization in the nation, in the world. And really we focus a lot on mental health. And so I want us to really think about what the social work perspective is. That's really looking at that person in their environment. So really thinking about those environmental factors that influence mental health. And so, when we look at the data, we find that many black males are exposed to trauma daily. They are exposed to both as witnesses and victims, right? We are also significantly less likely than other ethnic groups to seek mental health services due to individual barriers such as lack of knowledge, stigma, access to services, service eligibility issues, socioeconomic status, and all those things play a role into how do people access mental health. So I would say, in addition to suicide, one of the largest issues impacting Black men and boys is definitely access to care and the availability of mental health workers that look like us and can help to engage in treatment around the mental health. And so for social workers, we continue to advocate on behalf of access to services, social justice, and really how can we meet people where they are and impact change across the continuum from prevention all the way to intervention, treatment, and care. So I would say that's one of the biggest issues.
Dr. Evans.
Thank you, Dr. Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton, and Congresswoman Wilson, Congressman Johnson, Congresswoman Beth. Let me just add to what my colleagues have said and point out another issue that often gets lost in these discussions, and that's the issue of substance use. And I want to use adolescent substance use just as an example. So one of the major challenges we have is that when African American men and boys have these issues, if they get help, they're getting it late, and it is often not of high quality. If you look at substance use, historically, African American youth, despite what you see in the media, use substances at a lower rate than their counterparts. When they use substances, they often start later than their counterparts. They use less substances, and generally they have lower substance use rates. That has changed over time, but it's still a fact. But when you get to late stages, alcoholism, you look at who's incarcerated, you look at people who are dying from substance use, there's disproportionately people of color, African Americans in particular. So I think it just highlights one of the challenges we have is that even when we have protective factors in our community, those protective factors are not enough to overcome the systemic barriers that we have for getting the help that we need.
Dr. Gilson.
Thank you, Dr. Reverend Sharpton, and to Congressman Wilson, Congressman Ike Johnson, and Congresswoman Brett. Thank you very much, and to the National Action Network. Thank you. And as we're keeping it real, I think that there's something else here from the standpoint of Black adults seeking mental health care. Only 33%, so 1/3 of those that need care actually seek it. Next is actually being able to get it. So now let's go to what Dr. J. Barnett talked about in terms of suicide. Over the last 2 decades, the suicide rates amongst Black men has increased over 25%. Now let's take that down another level to the young people. Suicide attempts in Black adolescents rose by 73% over the last 2 decades. So what does that look like when we're talking about our young people? We need early intervention. We need it early, what we call upstream, from the standpoint of getting to our young people as they're sitting here in the audience with us. And then we have to really change the narrative in terms of mental health. As the World Health Organization coined some 20-some years ago, there is no physical health without mental health. So just like we seek help for everything below the neck, we need to seek help for everything above the neck. We're the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the largest grassroots mental health organization in the U.S., and we're in over 650 communities across the U.S. We'd like to say we're the DNA in the communities across the U.S., and about 65% of our folks are volunteers, and they turn their pain into purpose, and that purpose is their passion, and they lead with that, and they do the work in the communities every day, and we're just grateful for this conversation. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to Marcus Smith.
Thank you, Rev. Sharpton.
Just 1 minute. They will take a 30-second break and I'll come right back.
I just want you to be aware of the young men and the white folks. These are called the young doctors. Frederica Prevention Wilson. With prevention, you will see me in the middle of it. Now, these young men all want to be physicians or psychologists or psychiatrists or something in the field of medicine, even nurses. And we know that in order for them to do that, we have got to support them and uplift them and give them all kinds of resources. So this is exposure for them today. Stand up, young men.
Yeah, give them a big hand. Keeping it real. I'm your host, Reverend Al Sharpton. We're live at the House of Justice in Harlem with our members of Congress headed by our chair of the U.S. Commission on Black Men and Boys. We're taking your calls at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We're talking about black men and boys' health. Dr. Gillison, just say that again. Just the data that we only 33% of blacks. Give us just the statistics you gave again. Go ahead.
When you think about the numbers, Reverend Sharpton, only 33% of black adults with mental health conditions actually receive treatment. So we're talking about 66% that don't. The next
that
number
don't receive
that
treatment.
don't receive treatment. The next number I shared was the suicide rates among black men have increased by 25% over the last 2 decades.
Wow.
And the last number I shared was suicide attempts in black adolescents rose by 73% over the last 2 decades.
So you're around the country listening. There's no one listening that doesn't know someone or someone in their family that need to deal with some level of mental health, if not suicide tendency. Marcus Smith, former NFL linebacker, take it from there. Why are you involved in this? What compelled you to be involved?
Well, yeah, thank you, Reverend.
Because I see you here, you're involved, you made plenty of money. You don't have to be sitting up here talking about it. As rich as you are, you're up in Harlem talking about mental health.
Well, first off, thank you, Reverend Sharpton, Congresswoman Wilson, Congresswoman Macbeth, and Congressman Johnson. I think this is a topic that that needs to be talked about first and foremost. Obviously, I'm a former 6-year NFL veteran, played for many different teams, but when you look at kids in general, they look up to athletes. So we have a duty, we have a pedestal for us to continue to talk about mental health, but also I had a run-in with suicide while playing in the NFL. So I am a lived experience. I understand what, everybody on this panel is kind of alluding to and talk about. And when you look at kids starting at 8, 9, 10 years old, we're taught to suppress, right? We're taught to suppress all of our emotions, right? Especially football is a very barbaric sport, right? So you're not going to give the next man an inch on you, and you're not going to tell him your feelings or tell him what's going on with you. And I think that we take that with us in everyday life. And so, my message to kids and people out there is that the more that you speak, the more that you free yourself. So every time that you speak, every time that you get with someone who you can be vulnerable with, you free yourself from all the pain, the trauma, the things that you may have been going through throughout your whole entire life. And so that's why it's super important for me to be here, because they have to see someone that is in the highest profession of their career, but I have issues too, and I have to have support systems in order for me to continue to combat these mental health issues. So that's why it's important to me.
Wow. Give him a hand. Congresswoman McBath, let's hear something from you, and you may want to address a question to the panel, and we're taking your calls, 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Congresswoman Lucy McBath.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Al, and I just must say I'm really grateful to the amazing panel of such accomplished and distinguished Black men that we have before us that are really investing in our communities, investing into our Black men, our young boys. We need you. And thank you for the courage and your willingness to do this and to show to our Black men and boys what, I guess the 100 Black men say what they see they will be. And so to know that you are invested in them is really vitally important. I just want to say thank you to Chairwoman Wilson and Reverend Al and our guests for convening this really critical and timely conversation. I'm a mother of a young Black man whose life was taken tragically by gun violence. And the health and well-being of our Black men and boys is critical and paramount to me, because I see in each and every one of the young Black men that are sitting behind you, I see my Jordan. I see the promise of my Jordan. My Jordan did not get a chance to be here and to live out his life. And so I have committed my life and my work in Congress to making sure that we are creating a safety net for our young Black men and our young Black boys in our community, because you are under assault. Yes. And it is incumbent upon us in Congress, it is incumbent upon every one of us in our communities, mothers, fathers, sisters, aunties, uncles. It is incumbent upon us to embrace you, to be that safety net, to care for you, and to protect you, because America is in crisis. Amen. And yes, our young Black men and boys are facing a mental health crisis in America. It's a crisis that has been exacerbated by the recent pandemic that we're all still going through and coming through. And one that endangers our communities and the communities that we have sworn as elected officials that we're going to serve and protect. Suicide rates have increased over the last 20 years. And of course, the old adage is when America gets a cold, our communities get pneumonia. Right. More than half of the young men and women that are dying in our country are dying by firearm. So no one group is more likely to experience mental illness than any other, yet we are seeing an alarming rise in suicide attempts among Black men specifically, as was recently stated. This is heartbreaking, and this is unacceptable. I am a mom to my core. No matter whatever title you give me as Congresswoman, representative, at the core of my being is I'm a mom, and I am Jordan's mom. And I'm entrusted to walk out and to care for every young Black man in this country, to help you be everything that you were ordained to be by God. So when I took my oath of office, I swore to continue to mother Jordan even in Congress, to mother Jordan all across this country, to mother Jordan in the face of every young Black male, to make sure that you have opportunity to survive and to thrive. And even though Jordan is no longer physically here on earth with us, I have taken a vow and at this time we must introduce to you the phenomenal Senator LaFon Zapata.
For you listening around the country, U.S. Senator from California, LaFonda Butler, an activist extraordinaire. We go way back. We've been, well, I don't have to talk about where we've been. Go ahead, Congresswoman.
But even though my son is no longer here physically with us on earth, I swore an oath that I would do everything that I could to protect the lives of other young black men like him. So to address the crisis of suicide by firearms, which I do every single day, I have introduced what's called the Federal Extremist Protection Order, which is red flag laws. Once red flag laws are implemented all across the country, those closest to someone who actually is in crisis, and that's what we're talking about today, young black men and men that are in crisis, emotional, psychological, and mental crisis, we will have the power to save them. We'll have a tool to save them. When a family member or household member or law enforcement officer, they can submit a petition to the court upholding the due process of the individual that you're saying is in crisis for the temporary removal of those firearms for that individual who is at risk. And that is vitally important to our community. We are working diligently in Congress. We are working with the Senate. We are working with Senator Butler to make sure that all of our communities in our country have access to these life-saving tools. To our witnesses today, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
All right, give her another hand. Congresswoman Wilson. Let us now hear from Congressman from Georgia, Congressman Hank Johnson. Give him a hand.
Thank you, Reverend. It is such an honor for me to, in my 70 years of living on this earth, to make it to the point where I can be live and in person on the radio show with Reverend Al Sharpton. This is, and to be here in Harlem at the House of Justice, amongst my people up here in New York. I'm hailing from Atlanta, Georgia. I went to Atlanta, Georgia when I was 17 years old from Washington, D.C. And when I was in Washington, D.C., I was a young black man, just like these young black men in these white smocks who are here today. And the pressure that folks in my generation and myself lived under are probably not as great as the pressure that these young men live under. But I can tell you that in this country, it's always been a pressure cooker for black men in particular. Because when we were brought to this country against our will, they had to break our spirit. So they put us in a box and subjected us to all kinds of intensive pressure. And that box, the contours of the box have changed over the years, but the box is still there, and the pressure being applied is even greater. So I'm happy to be here with a man that has been fighting the pressure for as long as I've been living. He's a couple of years younger than I, Reverend Al.
Say that again.
I think he is. I'm trying to be, he might have me by a couple of years, but we share the same age bracket. And so I'm happy to be with him. I'm happy to be here with the lioness of the Congress, Representative Frederica Wilson. Every moment that she is alive, she's thinking about what we can do, not for anybody else, but these precious young black males. And I thank her for her work, and I'm honored to join her today. Along with my colleague Lucy McBath, who is a living testament to how our families are impacted by our young men, who, as one of the panelists said, because of this intense pressure, are more and more becoming either suicidal or homicidal. But either way it goes, it affects our families, and it affects the neighbors next door when we lose one of our young black males. And last but not least, I'm happy to be here with our Senator LaFonza Butler from California. Looking forward to hearing what she has to say. And also I've got to give a big shout out to the listening audience that is vast down there in Atlanta, listening to WAOK radio, 1 to 4 every afternoon. And Reverend Al, take the holiday off. He's always working. And we appreciate that. And my regard goes out to each and every one of the panelists who are here today to share their knowledge with us. Thank you all for being here. I just have one question. Is it appropriate?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. What do you gentlemen think we should do in Congress to relieve some of this pressure that is unique to black males coming up in America?
That's a good question.
Thank you for that question, Congressman.
Not on. You ready?
Here we go. Thank you for that question, Congressman Johnson. I think one of the biggest things that we've all talked about, and I think that, sitting at this table, we can all agree, one of the biggest issues facing the current mental health crisis is around workforce. So certainly addressing workforce issues, passing legislation that increases funding to bring more people of color into the mental health space. I'll give you a statistic, and it's one that I can be proud of because I can brag about it to these gentlemen at the table, but it's one that we need to increase, and that's 22%. So 22% of social workers are people of color, which is the highest among all mental health organizations. But we need to do better, right? And so when I think about the mental health workforce, when I think about what Congress can do, it's certainly earmarking funds to improve behavioral health strategies, earmarking funds to increase workforce and allow for individuals of color. One of the things that we hear a lot, especially when it comes to our mental health workforce, is just the amount of student loan debt that they're in. So when they are coming through the programs, their graduate programs, to get to be coming into the behavioral space, when they get licensed, by the time they go through that whole process, the amount of loan debt that they have accumulated because of education far surpasses what they're making in salary. So thinking about how do we increase salaries to increase and retain the workforce is one of those areas that Congress can impact and make legislation around.
Let us hear now from the U.S. Senator, State of California, Senator LaFonza Butler. Give her a hand.
Thank you all for having me. I couldn't imagine myself being at a different place in this moment than right here where I am, where we are in the House of Justice. Reverend Sharpton, you and I do go back, and we have done a thing or two about a thing or two. And so it is an honor and a pleasure to be in the House of Justice with you, and so thank you for the invitation. Congresswoman Wilson and I found our way to each other as I landed in the United States Senate and learned that our souls were connected in a commitment to our young people. And we have found our way to work on legislation on behalf of young people and their empowerment. And it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you again for inviting me to join this important conversation that the Congresswoman is not just now starting. It's important to know that she ain't new to it, she's true to it. I have seen these panelists at a prior hearing that the Congresswoman convened in Washington. And so to our young leaders who are in the audience listening, and those who are on the line, it is important to know, from my perspective, that I am joining a panel of champions who are committed to your futures, who are committed to your futures, not just to survive and make it through, but to be able to thrive and pursue your dreams with all of the supports that you need including the workforce, and making sure that you have the kinds of surrounding ecosystems that will help you get to the dreams that you have each and every day. Mr. Smith, it's so good to see you again. I think this is our third time around the sun together. But it is, and I have now seen all of your commercials. Mr. Smith is actually, is actually doing work and putting himself and his family and his story and his mental health journey out there for the world to see. And so it's not just about being seen by elected officials. It is about offering his experience to young leaders to experience in every way that they engage. Not everybody's going to be able to come to a hearing. Sometimes not everybody is going to be able to watch. I saw the commercial as I was watching Reverend Sharpton in between the gospel competition on Fox. That's where I saw the commercial. So I just want to recognize that you are not just talking, but that you truly are doing. And I hope we get to, I know we're going to get to a really robust conversation, because that's what the Congresswoman and it's how Reverend Sharpton leads, but to be able to share the stage with Lucy McBath and Congressman Johnson at a time where, for the first time, according to data in 2022, the suicide rate for Black males has now eclipsed that of their non-Hispanic white counterparts for the first time in 2022.
Wow.
Suicide is what is happening to young Black men in our country. And so we are not here just to engage in a conversation, but hopefully to arrest the cycle of trauma and stress that drive our young men to believe that that is the pathway out for them, that is the only way that they can find peace. And so thank you all for being here. Reverend Sharpton, thank you again for your just generations of leadership. I'm not going to age myself trying to compare my work to your work.
let me make it clear. I'm 11 years younger than Biden and 9.5 younger than Trump. So if they can run for president, I can run with Frederica Wilson. Let me say we're back. I see callers coming, Ms. Eunice from Chicago and Ms. Richardson and others. I'm going to the phone, but we have the young doctors group here with us. Is that what we call it? And they're all in their doctor's right. And I want them to ask some questions. We're talking, this is a special Keeping It Real. I'm live. We're at the House of Justice. Frederica Wilson, our Congresswoman, and I want some of the young doctors to ask the first question. You're on all over the country. I think getting the mic set. Let me remind all of our listeners around the country, we're live as we are every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Politics Nation with Al Sharpton, MSNBC. My guest tomorrow will be Congressman Jim Clyburn, telling us how we are to move forward with all of the controversy around the president. After the president's press conference last night, I did take issue that they didn't have no Black reporters, so the White House is calling me, and I told them Hank Johnson told me to say it. Let's go to the, give us your name, young man. I'm going to the phone to the middle. I want to hear a couple of these young people ask a question to the panel and to our members of Congress. And I know that you have something you want to say. Give us your name and your age.
Good afternoon. My name is DeMonte Reed. I'm 18. I'm with the Young Doctors Program, and I'm from Washington, D.C. Yeah. And my question is, since suicide rates in Black men and boys have almost tripled, what are the main factors in the substantial increase, and what measures are being implemented to prevent or reduce this alarming statistic?
Wow. Anybody on the panel or any members of Congress want to address that? Why it's going up a third? Suicide. Why? Dr. Gillison?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to each and every one of you all. Seeing these black men in white coats, these black young people in white coats, and pursuing fields of medicine is fantastic. And in terms of the question, we have it's more of looking at not just the access to mental health care, it's also what we call vicarious trauma, and what some of our young people are experiencing through the lens of what they're seeing in other situations. And we have to increase hope for our young people, and we have to have platforms like this where we have the discussion and make sure our young people know they are not alone. One of NAMI's mantras is, "You are not alone, nothing about us without us." But we can't see us if we don't come together. So it's about community, and it's about connecting, and it's about collaboration. So we see that these forums help give hope and help give instruments. Now what we do is we have support groups, and we have other programs that we have in communities where you can go and have those conversations that can help move the needle in terms of how you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then how to access services.
No, and you know, I think it's important, Congresswoman Wilson, because all of us, and I thank you for kicking us off, all of us have some trauma that we never dealt with. And a few years ago, my daughter, Ashley, my two daughters here, asked me, why do I like jump and get attitude? People run up to me in the airport. And I never thought about it till later. But you remember many years ago, I was leading a march and a guy came and stabbed me. And it was a trauma I never got over. That if somebody comes around me abruptly, I go back to that scene without even thinking about it. And I'm saying that because I want people to understand, just because you may have a different position, all of us is trying to recover from some trauma. And we need to find out what it is. Otherwise, we will end up acting like that's just our normal personality rather than deal with that trauma. Y'all want to respond to his question?
Yeah, the post-traumatic stress that afflicts our neighborhoods. I live in a well-to-do, middle-class neighborhood in Stonecrest, Georgia. I don't go to bed at night, every night, without hearing some gunfire in the neighborhood. And the gunfire, the closer that it gets to you, the more trauma that you feel. And so we have entire neighborhoods of people who are resolved to the fact that there's gonna be some shooting tonight. It happens every night, and you find out the next morning, how many have been injured and who has been killed. And those figures reflect the pain, the intensity of the trauma going on in the neighborhoods and in the families. And so it is, our neighborhoods live with this post-traumatic stress syndrome as if you had been in a war. And every time you hear that loud bang or clap, could it be next door to you? That's how we're living. And we have to find some ways of diffusing that intensity, that trauma. And one of the things we can do is to acknowledge that no matter where you are, if you're living in among your people, you can't escape the fact that this trauma is affecting you and your family. And so to deny that mental health is an issue, or to not know that mental health treatment is available, just kind of compounds the situation. And so we really need to start sending the message to our people that we are traumatized after years and generations of life. And we need to seek out the kind of professional help that can bring us back to realizing that we have sustained some damage, some trauma, and it's okay to feel bad about it. It's okay to be down about it. But there's hope in us being together, acknowledging what we've been through, and then resolving that we're strong When we were brought to this country in chains, they bought us because we were strong. And they can't break us. They haven't broken us yet. And it's up to us. It's all lies within us to strengthen ourselves, and not just ourselves, but our families and our communities. And we can make our communities better just by feeling good about who we are. There's nobody better than us, and we can do anything that we put our minds to do. We just need to have some positive reinforcement instead of that negative reinforcement coming at us all the time. And it shows like this that we're on today, where we can get a chance to talk to each other, talk at each other, talk with each other, hear from each other. And when we leave out of this setting, we'll be a little bit stronger to take on the pain that is out there. But it doesn't have to be like that. We can make it better.
Congressman Hank Johnson. Congresswoman Frederica. Congresswoman Wilson.
And I must say that my colleague speaks a lot of truth, but I think we also have to always be very mindful of remembering the social determinants such as lack of affordable and safe housing, a lack of education, a lack of health care, quality health care, the lacks of that create the foundational barriers which create the traumas by which our communities live in every single day. And so I think eradicating these foundational barriers, those things that I've just spoken of, eradicating those barriers, eradicating that kind of foundational trauma is how we begin to heal as well. A lot of those social determinants also predicate the violence that happens in our communities. They predicate the lack of self-worth that happens in our communities. It predicates the lack of vision in our communities. And so by breaking down those foundational social determinants, which we must continue to do each and every single day, and as was just expressed by my colleague, Reverend Al, thank you for doing that every single day. The work that you do helps to expose those social determinants, continue to place pressure on this nation to recognize and to acknowledge what is happening in our communities so that we can continue in forums like this and to educate our communities so that we are holistically growing and building together to overcome these social determinants that are causing this kind of trauma over and over again in our communities and our people every day.
Dr. J. Barnett.
Yes, to the question that the young man asked, I think I want to push it a bit further. Surviving is exhausting. And I just want to let that sit for a while. It's exhausting to survive. When you think about what happened a few years ago with George Floyd, that was symbolic to what a lot of black men feel. That they watched the man die with his knee on his neck, and many black men feel that there's a knee on their neck from the world. So if there's a knee on my neck from the world, I don't know if I want to continue living because surviving is exhausting. And that exhaustion causes suicide ideation, where I now begin to feel, why am I living? And what is it worth to continue fighting for freedom when I feel that I'm still in the cage? And when we think about secondary trauma, for many of us, mental health is still new to black folks. In our studies in my master program, mental health was not for people of color. They did not have us in mind. So now you combine the past 4 years since the pandemic, and we all had to sit and watch George Floyd leave in real time through watching this on your phone. This brought up issues that you probably didn't even know that you had laying dormant.
That's right.
So this secondary trauma was something that we experienced indirectly. And so for many black men, this raised a myriad of different things that they had not processed. And so when you look at the suicide rate, there is an increase in a lack of hope. And so that brothers are hopeless, and when you have hopeless and brothers does not have hope, a brother does not wish to live. He does not wish to continue to survive. And brothers are struggling to, how do I find a reason to thrive in a world that has given me only a method to survive by giving me drugs? Arthur spoke about substance abuse. Many brothers smoke weed because their level of anxiety is high every time they walk outside of their door. We have not been given healthy coping mechanisms. We play sports because it's a way to cope with the pain that we're not willing to address. And I sit here at this table, not just being a former athlete, but also a 2-time suicide survivor after I left the NFL. So I know what it looks like in real time when you are tired of surviving, because the helmet gave me a sense of purpose, a sense of identity.
Well, what provoked you, since you were open about your 2 suicide attempts?
So what provoked me was the pain of the divorce of my parents, not feeling heard, not feeling seen, being the only boy, the parentification of being called the man of the house when my father left, and when football gave me a place to hide. And many of us hide, and it may not be a helmet, so sometimes it's our career, sometimes it's our cars. And for me, when I could no longer hide because I didn't have the field, I didn't find a reason to keep living because the pain was too much to bear. And when you think about people who are dying by way of suicide, they're not dying because they're tired of living, they're dying because they don't want to deal with the pain. And they take their life to relieve themselves of the pain. And so when we're thinking about this suicide rate with black boys and black men are hurting on levels that we couldn't imagine. So when I look at these young black males behind me in these white coats, it is encouraging because we have less black doctors today than we did in 1970. When you think about the mental health field, 41,000+ mental health professions, 2% of blacks and less than 1% of black males. It was my story that encouraged me to go back and get a master's. It was my story that encouraged me to go back and earn a doctorate in healthcare because I understood the micro, but I also wanted to sit at the table from a macro level because there's no system and there's no community program and there's no men that look like Marcus and I, because they're not going to listen to someone who's saying, hey, just pray about it. Because 90.4% of black Americans would rather go to church than seek mental health counseling. And now the churches are needing our help.
Yeah. Preachers need some help. Anyone else from your red band? Let him raise his question.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Lawson President. I'm from Upper Marlboro. I'm a rising freshman in the fall. We attend Duke University. And my question, I think, was touched on a little bit, but what role does toxic masculinity and generational trauma play into black men's mental health, and why is it so unaddressed in society today?
What role does toxic masculinity and what?
Generational trauma.
Generational trauma. You sound like somebody in Duke University. Don't get a holler with all them big words.
Well, I don't think that toxic masculinity is a phrase that is healthy to our black boys and black men when you think about the way that we've been socialized as black boys not to cry and man up. And so now men are being asked to open up and they don't have the vocabulary and they don't have the language to articulate and to actually express anyway. And when you think about the generational trauma, I grew up in Mississippi. My grandparents were shareholders. They were kids of the Great Depression. They was only trying to survive, who raised kids who were my parents, who was trying to create a better life than them. So you have this compounded trauma from repetitive racial trauma that has been passed down. And by the time it gets to me, the abandonment that I experienced was the same abandonment that my father had, but it was abandonment that his dad did because he was just trying to make a living. So generational trauma plays a huge impact with black men because you cannot become what you don't see. So we have generational trauma showing up through their behavior. It's showing up in the way that it's expressed in their genes when we're seeing anger, when you're seeing the 3 stages of anger that is carried out, where you have this rage and you have this escalation, and then it's explosive, then it's a post-explosion where the brother doesn't remember what happened. And so we have a lot of trauma that has not been addressed and that has not been resolved because mental health is still new to us. I've been in this field almost 10 years, and my therapy journey led me to this field. And I was the only black male that graduated in my graduate program. And when I think about the 72 students that graduated our program, and I looked around me, I didn't see people that looked like me. In fact, in my graduate program, a white lady said black men don't go to therapy, they go to jail. That is what pushed me. So the trauma that we've endured from a family, intergeneration, and the racial trauma is compounded. And when you're telling a black man to go to therapy, he's out of breath to even think about what he would have to address in that space. So for most brothers, this moment is going to be therapeutic. It won't be therapy, but it'll be therapeutic. And so the generational trauma plays a lot, but I think it starts with, these hearings and these active listening sessions where brothers can begin to see, I'm not alone. So I think that's important.
Give him a hand. I'll take a 1 minute break and we're gonna come right back and go to the next question. Keeping it real. I'm your host, Reverend Al Sharpton, and we're back. It's Exhale Friday, and we dedicated this to the looking at suicide and mental health of black men and boys. We have so many experts up here, as well as Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, who chairs the commission, Congressman Hank Johnson, Congresswoman Senator LaFonza Butler, and Congresswoman Lucy McBath. Let me go to the phones before I take the next question. Congresswoman Wilson, we go to Seattle, Washington, listening on 1620 AM. Alicia, you're keeping it real with Al Sharpton.
Hello, my I just wanted to say that as far as black men and boys are concerned, they're committing suicide because of racism. See, black people have gone through like 1,000 years of racism, and I see it myself because I'm from Seattle. In Seattle, you see so many black men, black boys walking around the streets. They don't have any teeth. They don't have any kind of clothes. You can tell that they're not getting no health care. Hello?
Yeah, we listen.
Okay. Okay. And I know people might think that, who is that? What am I doing to help solve the problem? I'm an independent television producer, and I've been working in the black community for years. I had my own television show and other things, because it would take all day to explain. But I did interview Rosa Parks. Okay. Black people have been sitting on the sideline for, it seems like 1,000 years. And immigrants come over here and they piggyback off of black people. And I have seen it, okay, every day. They got all kind of bank loans, all kind of brand new equipment. Everybody's driving a brand new car, wearing diamonds and so on and so on. Because if you mess with the immigrants, and they know,
But she ain't teaching. She's been, wait a minute, but the racism didn't start with immigrants. And we got to be real clear about that, Anisha, but thank you for your call. Let's go back to the audience, to the young doctor.
Can I just talk like this?
Yeah.
Because I don't need
No, you got to talk in the microphone. I hear you on the radio.
Okay, first off, I want to say all thanks to God for even letting me be in this position in the first place. It's an honor being in the same room as you, because I've heard so much stories about you from my grandmother, my father, my mother, and also to Miss Macbeth. I do want to send my condolences about your son. I can't imagine how bad that grieving was, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys my name. My name is David Turner II. I'm 16 years old. I'm going into my 11th grade year. And my question is, I'm from North Carolina, Kannapolis. I just recently moved to DC not too long ago. And my question is, in your professional opinion, what is the most detrimental effect of the social environment have on black men and boys?
All right, any of our experts, young man 16, going to finish in 11th grade, and he's up here from North Carolina going into Washington. That's a beautiful question. You going with that, Dr. Street?
Yes, I am. And so, the social environment plays a huge role in terms of mental health. I am in the DMV area, and so prior to this role, I was faculty at Morgan State. One of the things that we oftentimes talked about was how the community looked. And so when people walk out of their community and they see houses that are boarded up, when they see immense poverty, when they see yellow tape from the shooting from the night before, that creates a trauma that re-traumatizes people, and it leads to ongoing mental health. And I think it goes back to what Dr. J was saying in terms of really thinking about where is the hope? How do we get people to be hopeful in a space where it's oftentimes to have that hope? And thinking about the social environment, really giving people something to believe in, really giving some people to hope for is one of the things that we have to really start to think about and increase. As we think about, to Dr. J's point, as we think about mental health being new in the black community, right? I remember, growing up, my family's from North Carolina, what happens in this house stays in this house, right? And so everybody has heard that. So now we're in this space now where we're like, hey, you need to engage in mental health treatment. You need to talk about what's going on, right? And so that's a new kind of conversation that we're having. And so when we think about that social environment, we see things that happen in our community, but we're also told that if you start snitching, that's a bad thing, right? And so how do we heal as a people, how do we heal as a community, but also how do we make sure that these conversations are healthy? Because again, talking about my trauma, depending on who I'm talking to and where it happened, could lead to more trauma, it can lead to a bad experience, and then people are re-traumatized, right? Oftentimes, we hear stories about or I went to try out therapy, and the therapist, they asked me, you know, what happened in my childhood, right? And so they had a bad experience in therapy, which could lead to them never coming back to therapy again. So when we think about the environment, and to your point, Congresswoman Macbeth talked about the social determinants of health. When we talk about education, when we talk about housing, when we talk about access to quality health care, all those things play a role in how people talk about mental health. And Dan talked about, you know, treating everything below the neck. We also have to think about that in context of treating everything above the neck, right? And so thinking about the environment really plays a huge part in mental health and how people can access mental health. So thinking about, you know, a large city, if there's, let's say, 20 black therapists in your area, but it takes you a 3-hour bus ride to get there, how likely are you going to go and see them? At the same time, the increase of telehealth is like, oh, it's a big thing, it's great, it adds access if you have Wi-Fi, if you have a way to connect. And so there's ways to think about the environment and what does that look like in terms of mental health that we really have to start addressing and making sure that as we're talking about access, we have to make sure that everybody has access.
All right, thank you.
I just want to appreciate the young man, for David, for being exactly who you are, no matter where you are, and standing in that. I just want to recognize and appreciate it. The 2 points that I'd like to just offer relative to this conversation and the question you asked around social environment. I think it's important for all of us to understand that as today we're talking about the mental health and stability of young black men, and there's an important role that women and girls play in that. I think it's an opportunity to connect the prior question to this notion of toxic masculinity, and just to be able to say to young women, to women and girls, when we call our brothers toxic, that too is another, you're becoming someone who is another person who has labeled them as something other than the powerful black man that we all know that they can be. And so I wanna, as the conversation is focused on young black men and women and girls, we have a role to play in the mental health and stability and the health and destigmatizing who it is that they want to become. Simply, one simple tool is by being mindful of the language that we use. And the names that we call. And yes, we're going to get into, I know that somebody's going to call and say, well, that goes both ways. And yes, it does. Language matters. And how we treat each other is important. And as we are sitting here talking about and listening to these young leaders in white coats use words and terms that I wonder the clinical origination and who those terms were really meant for, and how they sort of found their way into our communities. This is the one point that I wanted to make, the role that we play in the mental health and stability of our partners, our peers, our brothers, our uncles, those that we love and know are incredibly important pillars in our family and in our community. The second point, I think, that has already been referred to in the larger notion of social determinants. I just can say, as a young girl growing up in a small town in Magnolia, Mississippi, there was one stop light that became a stoplight after I graduated from high school. My entire career, my entire time in grade school, it was a stop sign, small town. That the work, it wasn't a fancy word of social determinants, it was the pain of being poor. And that poverty in and of itself can be a violent experience. Not knowing where your next meal is going to come from. Not knowing if you're going to have somewhere to sleep safe, that is safe for you and your family. Experiencing daily the domestic violence that's happening in your house and not being able to protect your mom or defend your dad, whatever the situation might be. Oftentimes, as we think about, as I sort of reflect in my leadership in this moment, giving voice to just the pain of being a poor kid, and figuring out how we destigmatize the help, trying to figure out how to get the help that we need. And I would just all close by offering a question, another question to the clinicians, the role of peer support, and how we help to create more access to conversations that are meaningful, that can connect young men to other young men, that can connect young women to other young women, even as there are short staffing in the professional space, in the clinical space. Are there things as members of Congress that we can be doing to enhance and support and fund efforts to build more opportunities for peer-to-peer support?
You want to answer that?
I think it is a very good point, and one of the things that has happened in the mental health field in the last 20 years is a recognition that if we're going to help people to recover, to help people to heal, it's not just treating the symptoms, it's understanding that there are all of these other issues around that recovery process. And people who are often the best equipped to help people through that journey are people who've gone through it themselves. Like Dr. Barnett said, his experience of having a mental health challenge is very powerful. He can add something to that therapeutic process and that recovery process that someone who hasn't gone through that can't add. So we know that that's very important. I also want to say, we've been talking a lot about social determinants, and I think it's important for us to understand where social determinants fit within the way we approach mental health now. Because the first question that we were asked was, well, what can Congress do? So one of the things that we have to recognize is that the model that most mental health practitioners were trained under is really a biomedical model. That mental illness is something in your head, it's something that's organic, it's something that's in you. And what we recognize is that that can be true, but we also know that there are things in our environment, there are things in our society, there are things in our communities that are impacting on us that are also having an impact on our mental health. And we have to take those things into consideration as well. And so when we talk about what can we do from a policy standpoint, one of the things is that we have to pay for and understand that those social drivers are things we need to act on if we want to help people. We could act as if those things aren't having an impact and wait until people have a diagnosis, or we could recognize that there are things that we can do. And I'll just give you an example. Reverend Sharpton mentioned his trauma. The thing about what Reverend Sharpton said, that is not an uncommon phenomenon. There are many people who are walking around in our community. There are people behind me, I am quite sure, who have had a similar experience. And so if we want to deal with that issue, one of the ways we can do that is intervene before people have a diagnosis. So one of the things I did when I was a mental health commissioner was in the aftermath of a shooting or a traumatic event, we would send people trained in psychological first aid into communities to help people in the immediate aftermath. Why? Because what we know is that when people have those kinds of traumas, have those kinds of experiences, and they go unattended, they turn into maladaptive coping. They turn into substance use. They turn into domestic violence. They turn into violence against other people. But if we can intervene before the person shows up at a mental health clinic to help people understand and deal with the trauma in the immediate aftermath, that's one way that we can reduce the likelihood that people are going to develop deeper problems. What does that require? That requires a different way of funding. Most of the funding in the mental health system now is for treating illness. It is paying for what we call a 50-minute psychotherapy hour. That's where most of our money is. If we want to do these kinds of things, we're going to have more flexible funding. We're going to have funding that are directed at communities that we know are underserved, and we have to have policies that recognize that these kinds of social determinants are very important to deal with, in addition to the other things that we are dealing with. Last thing that I would just mention is that we've been talking about masculinity and these other kinds of concepts. I think one of the hardest things for black men, when I was a therapist, one of the things that was really clear is that black men often don't even have the language for emotion. But we're talking about—
One minute, keeping it real. We're back live here at the House of Justice with our panel dealing with black men and boys, suicide and mental health. Go ahead, Dr. Evans.
So often black men don't even have the language. And so one of the things that I think is going to be very important for us is to, first of all, legitimize mental health as a real issue that black men can talk about, black men and boys can talk about, that we can create safe spaces for people to do that, to give people the language of emotion so that we can express what we're feeling. You ask a typical man, how are you feeling? And say, all right, and that's going to be it, pretty much. That's right. And so if we can do those kinds of things, those are the kinds of things that are going to help create an environment where we can do the healing that we need to do, that we can get the help that we need, because right now it is very, very difficult for men to do that. And just the last point that I'll make is we have to have a model of manhood that is both strong and can be vulnerable at the same time. It is okay for a man to say to their son, I love you, right? And to say it is okay to be afraid, and at the same time be strong. Because if we can't resolve that, people will choose one or the other. And we know that if you choose trying to be strong in the face of the kind of traumas that some of our men face, without acknowledging what has happened, it can be very detrimental.
All right, Dr. Arthur Evans. And let me say that the CEOs that I've introduced in the panel are all black men for you around the country listening on radio, and they run the largest mental health organizations in the country. Give them a big hand for being with us. Let's go back to one of our young doctors, then I'm going back to the phone.
Hey, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Drew from Washington, D.C. I'm going to the 10th grade. My question for you guys today is—
Going to the 10th grade, how old are you?
I'm 15.
Okay.
My question today is, do you think that social media, which allows people to portray an image that is not always based in reality, has anything to do with the reasons why black men and boys are especially suffering from increased suicidal rates?
Let's get Marcus Smith, former NFL linebacker, to answer that.
To answer that question, I honestly do think social media plays a huge role into mental health in the society today, because they see all of the prolific athletes, they see the rappers, they see everything. Like, nobody's posting their failures on social media, right? And so when you come onto social media, you feel, as a person, you feel like that's where I need to be, rather than running your own race. And a lot of times when God deals with me, he often tells me, hey man, you have to run your race. So when you look at social media and you're looking at all the things that you want to become or you want to be, and the algorithm is actually designed for the things that you like, right? So if you click on one thing, you'll start to see more of the things that you like, and you'll start to see more of it, and then that can turn into jealousy, that can turn into hatred if you're not yourself in the place where you want to be. And so I feel like social media does play a huge role into the mental health world, but I also feel like you can use it for your betterment as well. You can also look at it as, that is a place where I want to be, and it can cause you to be more confident in who you are, confident in what you want to do in your life, because that's how I use it. And I always will say this. When you think about success, right? Success is not a destination, it's a mindset. And so when you look at true success. I know, like, all of you guys are looking at success on social media and you think, hey man, you know, that's where I need to be, that's what it looks like. But really, success is true pain, it's struggle. It's the things that you endure along the way to get to your destiny. That is true success. So just know that even through your process, your journey, the things that you're going through, you're going to go through some trials and tribulations on your way there. But it's all designed and purpose for you to become the man that God has designed you to be.
All right. Let me go back to the phones, and I'm coming back here in the House of Justice. Let me go to Miss Eunice in Chicago, my ace boom coon on the air. Miss Eunice, you're keeping it real with Al Sharpton and all of these members of Congress.
Good afternoon, and Reverend, I'd like to thank you for having the elected officials on, and I'm glad to hear them talk about our young men. They need mentoring, and there are a lot of wonderful young men and women doing that. They need exposure. And I'm going to toot my grands and great children's horn, because we have doctors, teachers, counselors, and computer scientists in the family.
Wow.
So I'm so proud of them, and they've done a great job. And I'm going to forego the politics to accept to say Democrats need to come together and win this election. Thank you so much, Reverend.
Love Miss Eunice. Love Miss Eunice. Let's go to you.
Hi, I'm a member of National Action Network. Thank you, Reverend Al Sharpton, for having this. It's no coincidence that I'm here today. I was the mother of 2 children by the time I was 18 years old. My son moved back in with me during the pandemic, and I can't get him out. And he's going through so many mental challenges. He was a manager of a photography program for the Department of Probation. Hired. He's gonna kill me or himself. So I'm standing here asking for help. He's never been violent until now. I almost called the police, but he was so unmanageable. I said, if I call the police, they're gonna shoot him. So I didn't call the police. This is a man, 10 years ago, we went to a festival and he said, "Man, you got no money?" He pulled out his wallet. "Here, what you need, what you want?" He's in there, the good kid is in there, but he's nowhere to be found right now. I can't find him. Him being with me these 3 years rent-free. He's turning on me. So, I'm here and reaching out now. Thank you.
Yeah, don't get deeper than that. Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we feel for you in your story, but here's the thing. You should have hope, because there are ways. I know many, many people who've been in the same situation you are. You're in very different places today. So first of all, you need to have hope. Secondly, and I can help you after this event, but we will make sure that your son gets connected to something. I know that. There are psychologists all over the city. We have members here and we're going to make sure that you get connected. The third thing that I want to say is it's important for us in our community to get some basic understanding of mental health challenges, because 20%, 25% of the population is going to have a mental health challenge. So the likelihood that we have someone in our family that is facing this kind of thing is very high. And part of our coping is having some basic understanding. I just want to share a story of a woman when I was a commissioner in Philadelphia. Same situation as you. And there are so many black mothers who have sons who are experiencing mental health challenges. And they usually start to happen late adolescence to about their mid-20s. Somewhere in that range is when they start to emerge. Terrified to call the police because They don't want someone showing up with a gun as the first line of help. That's a whole different conversation that we need to have about how we respond to those things. But this woman went through a training around something called mental health first aid.
Yes.
The next time her son had that kind of challenge, because she knew what to do, she could sit with her husband, she knew who to call, and the whole response was very different. She didn't have to have the police to come because she had other ways of coping. So I want to encourage you to get some help, and I can also try to point you in the right direction for doing that as well.
Let us make sure that y'all hook up. Before you respond, I know the senator has to leave in a few minutes. I won't give you the last word before we you put your finger up like you're in church and walk out.
Thank you, Reverend, and it is, and I think this has just been a true gift. Again, these experiences, and every time we create these kinds of spaces and communities, the gift for me as a policymaker is to be able to sharpen the tools, the pens, the pencils, pull out the paper, to actually figure out what, and find new ways to make sure that we are being both relevant as a government and proximate to our communities. And this notion, Dr. Evans, Mr. Evans, that you've just raised, I just sort of scribbled down, I think 2 times here, mental health first aid, psychological first aid. I wonder what, I'm gonna have my team go back and try to examine with Health and Human Services, what are we doing in the space of providing the kind of funding that is needed for community organizations, making grants available. What are we doing in our police department? What are we doing to make sure that this concept is a regular part of our vernacular, so that we're no longer talking in ways that pit communities against one another, but actually creating a language and a skill set that is about moving our community forward. So thank you for that gift, and I have got my assignment. I encourage all of us to leave here clear about our assignment. It is not enough to just come and be a part of a conversation. Reverend Sharpton always told me that a good organizer leaves with an assignment. So making sure that we leave here clear about what it is that we are doing next. What is the next conversation that we're going to organize here at the House of Justice to continue the important focus on mental health? What are we going to do as policymakers? So thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for this opportunity, and thank you, Mr. Evans, for the gift.
Let me say this. For the senator to leave, I want the panelists to come around, stand behind her. I want to take a picture with her so she can let her, so just real quickly, I'm gonna take this break, take this picture, and we'll come back and finish the last hour. And I'm gonna give you assignments, Senator Butler. I want you to get the old man to step out of the race, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump should have been out.
Donald Trump, I want him out.
We want him out of the race.
One more. Thank you.
Hold it.
All right. Go ahead. I'm gonna have Congresswoman bring us back.
Nobody has mentioned the term mentoring. And when we always think about black men and boys, we always think about high school. But you have to think about the little first grader, second grader. How do you mentor those little boys so they won't have the issues moving forward? I'm gonna tell you this. I'm a school principal by trade. My school was 1/3 African American, 1/3 Anglo, and 1/3 Hispanic. And for some reason, of all the children that I had in my school, they lived in the same community. That little black boy stood out like a sore thumb. He wouldn't do his homework, he would cut up in school, wouldn't listen to the teacher, and I found myself saying on the way to school one day, I sure hope Timothy doesn't come to school today. Because he's gonna disturb my whole day. I'm gonna have to call his grandmother, etc. So what happened was, I said, Frederica, if you feel that way about Timothy, how do you think your teachers feel? So I called in, I'm from Miami, and I called in all the men who went to high school with me, all of my sorority sister husbands, all of my link sisters' husbands. And I said, I have these little black boys in my school, they're bad as hell, I need you to come and help them. I had done home visits and there was not one man at home to help them know how to be good boys. They were being raised by the grandmama and the mother, in some instances, just the grandmother by herself. So these men came to my school. And when they came, these little first grade, second grade, third grade, bad-ass little boys changed right before my eyes. Right before my eyes. And I said, this is the key. So I put them on little neckties and little white shirts and sent them out. And then I was elected to the school board. And once I was elected to the school board, I put it in every school. So these little black boys from the beginning know that they are worth something. Know that people love them. Know that they're gonna go to the zoo, they're gonna go to ballet, they're gonna go to the park, they're gonna go to Disney World. Know that the community supports them. And that's what we have to do with these little black boys. Because they're different. They're different. But we try to make it seem like all little boys are the same, but they have their own lived experiences. And they come from a different community, a different kind of upbringing. So we have to meet them where they are. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that if you feel any way about suicide, there's a number, a hotline. Yes. It's 988. Let's say it, young men. What is it? 988. If you feel like you want to take your life, dial 988, and there will be counselors on the phone to help you through this process. So everybody who's listening, write this number down, because this is Mental Health Month. In fact, it's National Minority Mental Health Month. And right here at the House of Justice, we are addressing that issue. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have another question posed by our young doctors.
Hello, thank you for having me. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. We met before at the previous Black Caucus, and I want to say that your story actually reminds me of my little brother. He's a spitting image of me, and he was cutting up in school until one day they called me instead of his mom, and that was a story for another day. But thank you for having me here. I wish I could give my thanks to Mr. Al Sharpton, or Reverend Al Sharpton. My grandfather always talked about him when I was little. But yes, you can pass it on. And I want to say thank you for the amazing people we have here. All of your words have been seared into my mind as fellow black men and people who I aspire to be. So thank you for your kind words. But I have a question myself. So as a black man and as a man who's just now coming into the realm of mental health and realizing what it means to open up, I've really found myself struggling with how to open up and what vocabulary words to use, and what methods are safe for me to open up, what's healthy and what's toxic masculinity really means. But on a legislative level, what things can be put in place to help our young men and boys that ensure that they, as people of color, we are happy, healthy, and have a state of emotional well-being?
So I want to say to the young man, thank you for your question. After George Floyd's death, I wrote a book titled Just Heal, Grow. And that book is a journal. And to the brother saying, how can black boys and black men begin to open up? I think one of the ways that we can express is through journaling. And it's through writing our words down. Particularly when you look at the way we are handled in the educational system, we're not presented, or we don't have the luxury to have an expansive range of emotion. So we only have an understanding of anger. And if you know anything about anger, it's a low-hanging fruit emotion, and it's also an umbrella emotion. So when you're seeing black boys express anger, it's usually an emotion that they're using to sort of safeguard and to protect something. And with that, I think it's important that you touched on it, Mr. Evans, about the community part of it. And I think what I would love to see for Congress is to partner with trusted messengers and organizations that are doing the work, individuals that are the messenger for these young people, because the times have changed. All the messages that they're receiving are on their phones. It's not by flyers, it's not by handouts. The vehicle has changed. And we all know that as we watch the NAACP sort of lose power as we begin to age, because the times change and they did not change the way that they carried out messages. And so for most of these young people, everything is on their phones. So what ways could you partner with trusted messengers, Marcus and myself and other organizations, and create these organizations that create social messages for these young people to have on their phones? One of the things that I have proposed is creating short films for these young people so they can see, how do I handle a crisis? How do I handle an
I'm not
episode?
gonna cut you off, just hold on a second, we coming back from break.
Yes.
And they need to hear that a black man who lived the history of the entire civil rights movement, to everyone who was assassinated, to everyone who joined in March, to every individual who never seen the fact that we got the right to vote because they became strange group. I have these tears in my eyes, they love because every
All right, y'all, give me some energy, y'all. Y'all, come on, y'all sleeping. Give me some energy, come on. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. We're live at the House of Justice Auditorium in the village of Harlem, West 145th Street, where we are live doing the U.S. Commission on Black Men and Boys field hearing on suicide and the mental health status of black men and boys. Before the break, I wanted, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson was talking about what we can do, young people out there, anyone out there in need of help. If you are thinking about committing suicide, there's actually some help you can tap into. Congresswoman, please give us that information. And we're taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation. Call us today, 1-877-532-5797. The lines are open. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, give us that information, please.
Okay, you can text 988 if you were thinking about committing suicide or you are in a crisis. That's the crisis hotline. Text it or call it today and pass the word along. Now, what is it, young man? 988. Thank you.
All right, let us go back to one of the young doctors first. One of the young doctors have another call, another question. as they come to the front. Let me go back to the phones then, and let me go to Rodney, the mayor at Queensbridge Houses in Queens, New York, Mayor Rodney Johnson.
Hey, my shepherd, how you doing?
All right, we're in the hearing. Go ahead, Rodney.
Yeah, I just want to talk about the law. We have this program at the VA called Life After Loss Group, and it's like I was a veteran, but I lost my father in 1980. I never really dealt with that. And, in the last 2 years, I lost 2 sisters. I had 5 sisters, 2 of them. And we deal a lot of times in our families, we don't deal with loss. We just put your chin up and keep going on. And it's like I never really dealt with my father's loss back in 1980. I rebelled. That's why mom took me up to the military. I spent 6 years in the Army. But then I came home, went through a lot of trials and tribulations. But yeah, the last 2 years, I lost 2 sisters. In 2022, I lost my sister Judy, and I lost my sister Mary in 2023. That's like a lot of us, we put up this facade, how pride gets in the way of solutions or whatever. So I just want to go out and shout out to some people, me going through loss, reach out. Luckily we have this group now at the VA, 23rd Street, Life After Loss group. A lot of us don't deal with loss. I didn't deal with it. That's why I went through a lot of stuff. I just turned 60 this past Sunday. God bless me for another year. But yes, we have to deal with loss. We have to deal with it, outwardly, and reach out. Hopefully we can reach out and somebody can help us.
So your point, and thank you for your call, is that loss also can traumatize us. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. I know that clearly it is something that you may not even realize. Yesterday when I was in Milwaukee, this young man, many of you saw on national news, that was held down at Hyatt Hotel and killed by the security guards. His family had me come preach the funeral. And when I looked at the body, I think that everybody from George Floyd back that I preached the funeral, and sometimes I wonder even if that's healthy for me to have to recycle. I find myself dreaming about that. And so I think that what he's raising is right, that we don't deal with our losses and even observing other people's losses without dealing with it in a way that would be therapeutic and healing. I think that is important. Let me go to this young man from Young Doc. Let me recognize that we've been joined by Congressman Jonathan Jackson from Chicago. And Representative Jackson is here at WVON crowd. Your congressman is in the house. We're on both the radio show and Dealing National. And Jonathan grew up coming here. He's been in the House of Justice many times. And in fact, your father just called. I tell him we was on radio. But let's let him make some opening statements on this issue of black men and boys with suicide and mental health, and then we'll go back to one of the young doctors and some of you on the line.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Uncle Al, for your great work. Thank you, Congresswoman Frederica, for your great work, and my colleagues that are with me today. But addressing the subject of teen suicide, I think you have to also look at this in the positive and not just in the negative. What creates a healthy family structure? You're supposed to have a male and a female, a mother and a father in your life. Men have a different way of coping with society. Women have a different way of coping with society. And out of that relationship, you can see how the mother deals with it, how the father deals with it, how a couple becomes whole. So children need to be in a nurturing environment. Let us not take our eye off what we need to become healthy. We need a mother and a father that are committed to the development of their child. Yeah. Before we talk about the adult trauma, we have a lot of it. We have to focus on the child trauma. When mothers and fathers separate, children tend to blame themselves. I want to first tell the children, it's not your fault, there's no one to blame, you will be resilient, so don't take out what adults have done on yourself. You've done nothing wrong if your mother and father decide to separate. I've seen child after child come forward with that sort of pain that they carry, which rolls on into, ultimately into adulthood, where we have not developed the emotional mechanisms to be mature. And those milestones, you go out and play with the ball, you play with other children. You're not mind, me, and have a fight or flight mentality where someone can go out and get shot because they have on a different pair of gym shoes. My conclusion, Reverend Al, is in the city of Chicago on the 4th of July weekend, and the reason this is so important to me is 109 people were shot in the south and southwest side of Chicago and predominantly African American communities during the 4th of July weekend. 19 people were killed, and many of those were young persons. Even on the 31st Street beach, I've been trying to reconcile, how does someone put on flip-flops, shoes, gym shoes, shorts, t-shirts, go to the beach and carry a gun? 4 people were killed within 24 hours just in the shadow of downtown, no more than 3 miles from downtown on the lakefront. So it goes to show you that there is trauma that's built in. On another time when we get to talk about sexual abuse in our community, that we can come forward, and through this catharsis, where people are being honest with their feelings and their experiences, we can move towards true healing.
All right.
Reverend Al, can I add something, Congressman? I love what you stated about the healthy family structure, but the one thing that I would challenge you on is that the family system is broken, and we have broken parents who have not dealt with their childhood issues, and their childhood issues are being projected onto the children. Divorce is one aspect of it, right? But when you think about a mother who didn't have a voice, and now you have this generation who are very open about their feelings. We all grew up that you couldn't talk back. So your way of expressing your feelings was also seen as disrespect. And so I think when we think about this issue, we have to think about really from a collaborative and from a family system, and which was the reason that I wanted to become a family therapist and became a family therapist, because until you repair the system, the people remain broken. And the only way to repair this family structure that you're speaking about is to provide family therapy to individuals, and particularly in the Black community, because we all talk about how it takes a village to raise the children, but the village is sick. Right. And the village needs healing. And so I think that healing has to start from a collective and a communal perspective.
Dr. Joy, I agree with you 1,000%. Absolutely, it's a broad subject. I was trying to be very discreet with just one component of one dimension that we're facing, but I agree with you. We have to pick up the pieces where we are, but I want to put in perspective the hope of where we have to go. So if someone's listening, this isn't ideal. You know, you stay together, leave the abuse out for the children. There's a nurturing and protection. I grew up the son of Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I could always call my uncle Reverend Al. I've never felt fear. I don't know what fear is. And if there's something I wish I could give to so many young Black boys, young Black girls, is the absence of fear. If you've grown up in a healthy environment, you don't have fear. You don't have limitations on your possibilities. You're not worried about going down in your neighborhood. I want that element of fear, because so much of this fighting comes out of fear, and it's an overreaction.
That's right. That's right. Though I can say that his father and him and me were scared of his mother. We had that fear.
Good afternoon. My name is Cassine Tate. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I am 17. And
17 years old. Give my hand.
I know you guys talked about making sure that we're knowledgeable about how to deal with our own emotions, but can you speak on the importance of teaching young people emotional intelligence to deal with not only their own emotional problems, but their peers, so that they can be their peers kind of cope with? And then how can our Congress people put that into play with making sure that different legislations and stuff can help more with that?
All right, give our experts, one of y'all give me emotional intelligence and then the Congress people on how we can do something with it.
So, thank you for the question. And so, social emotional learning or emotional intelligence is important for young people to learn how to be able to understand your feelings, but then also how to be able to talk about them. I think I go back again to this idea of mental health being a very new space for people of color and black people, right? And so when we think about language, giving people the appropriate language to do that. And so there was a question that was asked earlier about how can young people learn to speak about their emotions, right? And while I admire the young man for asking the question, I also think it's on the clinicians to be able to come up with innovative ways so that young people can express themselves through their words. And so some of that could be innovative approaches to therapy, innovative ways to working around mental health. So some of that could be using hip hop, some of it could be using art therapy, some of it could be using different ways other than traditional talk therapy where it's in the office. Myself and Dr. J were talking about when I was a practicing clinician, it was very rare that I had a session with a young person in my office. Typically we were outside playing basketball, doing something that got their mind off of what they were talking about so they could express themselves in a way that was very non-threatening. And so when we think about, the aspect of social emotional learning and how to be able to communicate that, it is about teaching language, but it's first about gaining that trust. Because if you don't trust me, you're not gonna open up to me and tell me anything. And I can't teach you how to name that emotion. Because again, thinking about and talking about, just anger itself. Anger can show up in a lot of different ways. Depression shows up in a lot of different ways. For some people, it could be sadness and the thoughts of suicide. For other people, it could be anger and outbursts. And so really thinking about how do we explain that level of emotion, how we explain that language to young people is one that is an ongoing and a collaborative process. So by working with therapists, by working with somebody that you feel comfortable with, you will be able to learn that language and teach your peers. Because again, that goes into that concept of credible messengers. So as you become more open and knowledgeable about social emotional learning, you can then talk to your peers, because 9 out of 10 times it's going to sound better coming from you than it is from me, right? And so, thinking through about how do we interact with peers and then using that peer process to talk about mental health.
All right, next question.
I'll be as brief as possible. First, I want to give thanks to God for everything and give honor to all whom honor is due. My question is, I hope everything that's understood don't have to be explained. My question is, what are we doing to give the greatest incentive, which would be financial incentive, to get people to want to come and listen? Because the game that's really being played is people are trying to make it so difficult to live financially that no one wants to hear anything, and then they're beefing up nice looking things that are very costly, so then they're fighting over it. And then you have the masculine and feminine energy, which is patience, let her have her perfect, which is feminine, and the masculine is to sit at the right hand to the footstool. What do we do about the money?
I think part of it, thank you for your question. I think part of it is that, Marcus Smith put it right. We got to redefine what success is. And money, you can have, I know people with plenty of money, but that are still not listening and still not doing anything. Success is not defined by what you have, it's defined by who you are. And I think the part of the purpose of today is for us to dig deep, deal with some of the pain, some of the trauma, and dig through all of that to find out who we really are and who we could really be. And I can give you $1,000 or $1 million. It's not going to correct you until you deal with that. Let's go on.
Good afternoon, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you for this hearing. Brother, what is his name? Johnson, Congressman Johnson?
Yeah, Hank Johnson.
He mentioned how he lived in Stony Brook and it's clean, it's neat and whatnot. And how those of us who live in neighborhoods with the bombs bursting in the air and all those kind of things. Well, I live in a community like that. And when you are a fighter, like I consider myself an activist for my neighborhood, and those bombs that are going off in my neighborhood are going off to let those so-called troublemakers that want to see change in the community is a threat, and it's telling you, watch yourself And so I just want to say, that's just one point I want to make. Them bombs you hearing, they just going for, they let folks know, those folks that want to see change and get things done, they let them know, this is what we got for you if you open your mouth. The other point I wanted to make is, in my household when I was growing up, I had a sister who ate books, right? I had another sister who started the Black Student Union at her college. They just did what came natural. Me, I like to go on the swings, play in the park. I got fed, clothed, and that was enough for me. But nobody was keeping an eye. Okay, what's my point in bringing that up? My sisters naturally come from a good family, but they naturally knew what they wanted out of life. They knew they wanted to read, and they wanted to be Black Student Union at their college. Nobody had to sit with them and tell them. So what I'm saying to you, and to any young person that's listening, go with what's in your spirit. Listen. Get real quiet. Reverend Sharpton, you get real quiet and you listen to that spirit in you. We don't have to, because our communities have already been brought and sold. That's why the bombs are bursting in there. Because we got our district leaders, the judges, all of them have been brought and sold. That's why ain't nothing happening. Because if I'm the one running stuff and stuff is still raggedy, it must be something wrong with the folks running.
All right. Let's go back to, all right, Dr. Jesse Fields is online. Dr. Fields.
Thank you very much for this very important hearing, and thank you, Reverend Sharpton, and members of Congress, elected officials, and thank you very much to the experts, to the panel. I'm a medical doctor, primary care physician. My office is 4 blocks from here, a member of the National Action Network, and it is so inspiring to see the young people here, the young doctors, and I think that it's important that the young doctors continue to be connected to the community. I went through medical school. I'm in the institution of medicine. Medicine as an institution is distant from our people, from our communities, and we have to change that. I'm creating our mental health workshops. I think we need new approaches, all kinds of approaches, so our people have the opportunity to partake of all the possibilities, from professional care to theater and poetry and art and creativity, which is what I use. So that's my question. How do we transform medicine so that it is in touch with our people, so it's really addressing the social determinants of health? That's not what's happening. And also the barrier of money, of insurance. You can't get a professional. It's very difficult to get mental health care for people who have public insurance, who have Medicaid, or even Medicare. There's a shortage. So we need more of our young doctors, like the young people here. We also need to transform medicine and put it in line with our people, for our people's interests. Thank you.
Dr. Evans.
I really love this question and this comment. And it goes back to what we've been talking about all day, which is we have a model for dealing with mental health in this nation that doesn't meet our needs. And the only way we're going to really deal with the issues that we have is we have to rethink, reconceptualize how we address these issues. And he mentioned theater, and I'll give you an example of the kinds of things we could be doing here in Harlem and places around the country. When I was commissioned, we did storytelling events where we had Black men tell their stories, not about their mental illness, but about their mental strength. And we would have, first time we did it, 300 people, 600 people, 1,000 people on a Friday night in Philly, listening to men tell their stories. Now, why did they come out? They came out because we changed the format. We weren't giving them a lecture about mental illness. What we were doing is having people from the community tell their own story of how they overcame living with a brother who had gotten shot, or them having been incarcerated, or any of the challenges that they had. And what was really interesting was when you create that kind of format, the people who showed up, mothers showed up with their sons, community groups would bring their adolescent kids, all kinds of people. And when we gave people an opportunity at the end of hearing these men tell their stories, frankly, we thought people were gonna leave after the quote entertainment, but what happened is people stayed because it was the first time they had an opportunity to talk about the kind of trauma that Reverend Sharpton talked about, things that they've been carrying around for 20 years, 15 years. It was the first time they were able to talk about that. So there are things that we can do in our community, and I hope people leave here understanding that mental health doesn't just happen through us professionals, people who've gone and gotten training. Mental health happens when we take and legitimize these issues, give people safe spaces to talk about these issues, are creative around how we deal with these issues, because that's how we're gonna change these things. So I hope that we can, if we leave with nothing else, we understand that it's not just about going to see a therapist. That's important, that's what I train for, that's what many of us train for, and we want people to have access to that. But there are all these other ways that we can reach people, have these conversations that help people to reduce the stresses and traumas that they've been dealing with.
Let's take the next question.
Yeah, good day, everybody, and God bless.
Wait a minute, just a minute. Congresswoman McBeth.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to the question to the doctor. You know, what can we as members of Congress do? And everything that is mentioned here is absolutely valid. But there again, as the purse strings, we're the purse strings of the nation. We appropriate the funding. And what we find that we're having all across the nation, not only in our rural communities, you know, we have healthcare deserts. We now have urban healthcare deserts, and particularly within our communities of color. But I will honestly have to say, I do know that this administration has helped to appropriate more funding for our federally qualified healthcare centers that are increasing the kinds of funding and programming needed for mental health for our communities. And that is our responsibility to make sure that that kind of appropriated funding continues to happen. And because I have visited within my own community, I represent Georgia's 7th Congressional District, and the district that I represent now is the most diverse district in the state of Georgia. This district, there's not one demographic of individuals that is more than other. I've got Latina, I've got AAPI, I've got African Americans. But the thing that we recognize within the state of Georgia, that we've seen an influx of appropriated funding for our federally qualified healthcare centers, where I have actually visited some within my district now, where they're getting funding for mental health programming. They're building those programs out, which specifically helps our people. So that is our responsibility, to make sure that we still afford the space for that funding to come to our communities so that we can help our own people.
All right. We're gonna run out of time, so let's do these three very quick.
Good day, everybody, and God bless everybody. My name is Sister Reverend Word. I'm from Heaven, born in Harlem. 73 years old, being new, a National Action Network lifetime member. I'm a retired Harlem teacher. Now, I believe we have access to the educational system everywhere. We encourage students to go to school, starting with even pre-K. And we encourage college for those who want to go to college. So we have access to these young people at a very early age, including the people who care for them. So I would like to make a suggestion, and the public official from Florida really included a segment that we need to utilize to the fullest on this issue of mental health, which is schools, and require the students to attend with at least one of their caregivers. And it could be held in the auditorium on a regular basis. So this will be in some form group therapy, but you don't have to use that name. And then you give them your card and they could call you if they want individual one-on-ones. But we need and the funding is already there. People could come and make presentations in schools. So I suggest that any mental health person who is really serious about it, get together and start using these big spaces, schools. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I suffer with mental illness. I had a breakdown in my home. the elevator wasn't working, and I had to stay there under God's anointing and get into the Word. And me pushing myself, trying to think that I need to be around people or family that don't understand me, I had to let God know. God had to tell me, you don't need to be around every function or celebration. And I know Reverend Al Sharpton had other people here talking about mental illness. Even with my sons, don't understand me because I was abused by their father. And it's hard for them to understand because they were babies. And I respect Dr. Al Sharpton, respect your black men here. And they had programs here a couple months ago, and I never got into a place to get any more help. I had help when the lady left. She went to Mount Vernon, my therapist. And the only thing I could do is go into my house and pray and try to get help. But I know I need help because there's a conflict with me and my older sister. I do understand her because she was raped and abused by somebody in the family, and also I was raped by someone in the family. But I don't call that person my brother, because if somebody attacked me and raped me, that's not my brother. Read Matthew 13 and you'll see what Jesus told the guards. Anybody that's worshiping God is my sisters and brothers. Thank you.
All right. Is anybody can talk with her? Okay. Dr. Evans would like to speak with you, so maybe we can get some help. We're going to go to our last break. When we come back, I'm going to ask the Congress people. Come on up, sister, to Dr. Evans. We're going to ask the Congressman to give us 2-minute closing. As we close this out, I want us to give them all a chance, the members of Congress, to give their closing remarks. At UN Radio Land, we will be back in 3 minutes. We're closing remarks. I thank y'all that came. I wanted to get the young doctors up here. I want to, JT, shoot some video. I want to show them on my TV show tomorrow night. No, I said after the break, I'm going to close it. Now I want to show they were here, and I thank the brothers. One of the best dressed man in Harlem. Where he go? He was online, and then they told him we were gonna cut off, so he reluctantly stepped away. Where my man go? David. No, there you go. Raise your hand. That's mine. I want to comment. This is the best dressed man in Harlem. He let everything. He sat down rather than break up. We appreciate you. Now you ain't got to come up. Now sit down now. I'm never calling you again. I gave you credit for not coming up. Now you gonna come up and just go sit him down. All right. I learned my lesson. I should have known. real, keeping it real. I'm your host, Reverend Al Sharpton, and we are glad for the last 3 hours we've had this open session here at the House of Justice in Harlem. Many of you calling in from around the country. Let me thank our panel, Dr. J. Barnett, Anthony Estrie, Dr. Arthur Evans, Daniel Gillison Jr., and Brother Marcus Smith. And he just told me he's going to write a big check to National Award. I so appreciate him. Let me ask our panel to give us 1 minute closing. Let me remind you all around the country that this weekend we're going to be dealing on Politics Nation with Al Sharpton with this whole issue of Biden stepping aside or not. Congressman Jim Clyburn will be on as one of my guests tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on MSNBC. The mayor of Milwaukee will be on as we deal with this Republican convention coming to the city. Watch both Saturday and Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on MSNBC. It's Frederica Wilson's favorite show. Let's go Congressman Jackson, then Congresswoman McBath, Congresswoman Johnson, and we're in with our chairman, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. They're going to give us their wrap-up minute each.
I'd like to first give a very special thank you, Reverend Al, for being committed to this body of work for so long and creating a space, a venue for us to have consistent information and messaging. And we are without incomparable talent in the Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. She has black men, black boys, the black family on her mind each and every day. Hank Johnson, thank you for your leadership and all that you do. A very wise and sage spirit in there. And Lucy McBeth, she's on the field every day talking about this gun violence that's affected her family. She confronts it. So you have advocates that are in the House of Representatives fighting for you. And I would tell you, the number that scares me, Reverend Al, is that we have a rise in young black males in teen suicide. I think there's a correlation between that and the tearing apart of the fabric of our community. So I'm so thankful for this venue. We need community, brothers and sisters. We cannot make it alone. We've always made it together. So continue to tune in, continue to rely on one another. Everybody else has community. We have to not give up on the idea of having a community where we can care for one another.
All right.
I want to thank Reverend Al. Thank you so much for being the heartbeat of the black community. I want to thank our wonderful leader and warrior on the front lines for black men and boys, Frederica Wilson. And I want to say that I'm confident that these conversations that we've had today can move the needle forward. We need to make the world a safer place for black men and boys. And we need to show them that there's a lot of hope and joy left for them, and they deserve every bit of it. I want to say, as Jordan's mother, a lot has been spoken here today concerning the plight of our young black men and boys in America. America is in crisis, and what that means for our men and boys can mean a matter of life or death for their existence in America. But I am so glad that each and every one of you here today is choosing to fight for life, choosing to fight for your lives, choosing to fight for your existence. And as I said once before, I see Jordan in every black man and every young black man in this room. And I couldn't be more grateful to fight on your behalf in Washington with my colleagues. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for your willingness to intercede on behalf of people that may never even know who you are. Thank you for standing up for us.
Congresswoman Lucy McBath. All right, Congressman Hank Johnson.
Thank you, Reverend Al. Thank you, Frederica Wilson. You know, things are tough in our communities, and we've been talking about it today. And but things could be a lot worse if we didn't have leaders like Reverend Al and Representative Frederica Wilson and all of the panelists that we have who addressed us today from a professional
congressional standpoint, thank y'all for being here, as well as my other dear colleagues who are serving under the leadership of Congresswoman Wilson on this very important issue, the social status of black men and boys in America. Things could be a lot worse for us, but I'll tell you, they will be a lot worse for us if we allow Donald Trump to get back in office. So that's why I agree wholeheartedly with what Reverend Al just said not too long ago about the fact that we need to get that old man out the race. And that old man is Donald Trump. Don't let him come back in here with Project 2025 and all that they planned for us. The box that I talked about earlier that we've been in, and the pressure in that box is going to get a whole lot worse if we don't rise to the occasion, turn our attention not so much from our pain, but to use our pain to be productive, to produce a better result for us all. And one of the things we can do is get registered to vote, young men and young ladies, and everybody else who's not registered, register. And then we got to get out there and vote for what's in our best interest in November. So thank you so much, Reverend Al.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Reverend Al, you know how I feel about you and have felt that way for years. You are a drum major for justice, a drum major for truth, and a drum major for peace. And let me say this to you. Whenever I would call Reverend Al, and it was numerous times as I moved through the political arena, he never once said to me, that's gonna cost you. He jumped on the plane and came where I was. I don't think a lot of people know that. And I want you to know about these witnesses here today. One of them actually changed his flight to go abroad so that he could be here today. And he is like, these are not just ordinary men. These are champions for mental health, champions for black men and boys. These are not just normal, ordinary people. And so for them to take all of this time to be here today, to share with us, I want everybody, especially these young boys, to stand up and give them a rounding roll. And we know that suicide is a very sensitive issue, and everyone cannot speak about it, but they can. So that was so special. And I want to say that everybody's tuning in about Donald Trump. Don't forget about Donald Trump's Project 2025. If you don't know about it, read about it, Google it, learn it, and you will know that we're in here talking about education. There will be no education for our children because there will be no more Department of Education. And we will go way back to where everybody would have to educate their children at home. That's because they don't want to pay for it. So I say to all of you today, thank you for supporting the U.S. Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. We are a new commission, and everyone on this commission was appointed by somebody. Yes. Who appointed you, Reverend Sharpton?
You did. And President Joe Biden.
All of us are here to serve you, to make sure that our black men and boys survive. Because you know what? I say to the little girls all the time, they say, Miss Wilson, you're always doing something for the boys. When are you gonna do something for the girls? And you know what I say to them? You may think that this is for the boys, but this is for you. I'm making you good husbands and good fathers for your children. And you know what they say to me now? Miss Wilson, my boyfriend is in the 5,000 role models of excellence. So they understand, and we have to understand. If we get that black man in order, if we keep him from being depressed because he didn't go to the NFL, if he spent night after night playing football and his mom and everybody in the hood say, you going to the NFL and you gonna bring us money back. And that doesn't happen because only 0.1% are gonna go. And when they don't go, they become depressed and distraught. And so that's a lot to do with the drugs and suicide. And we have to remember about sneakers, how important sneakers are for little black boys. And if they have raggedy sneakers, they're not gonna go to school. So the NFL said after George Floyd was murdered that they were gonna give $100 million back to the black community, and they haven't given a dime. Right. Okay, so we asked them to buy a pair of sneakers twice a year for little black boys, and it didn't even cost that much. So we're gonna need you the House of Justice, the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, the social workers, the psychiatrists, and all the young docs and everybody to put pressure to get that money to save our boys.
That's
Thank
right.
you for coming.
All right. Let me say as we sign off that we all are definitely and clearly in debt to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson and to these other members of Congress, Congressman Johnson, Congresswoman McBath, Congressman Jackson, U.S. Senator Butler for coming. We must keep this going, and we must keep this dialogue about our mental health and suicide going. And I want to thank all of you that came. Today we're going to take some pictures with the young doctors, and we will be here in the morning, Saturday Action Rally, 9 o'clock live. And remember, whatever you do, wherever you go, however you feel, tell somebody, tell anybody, tell everybody. Reverend Al told you personally, keep it real, keep it real, keep it real. I'll talk to you Monday.